Josh, I'm thinking it's quite light when it comes to video games right now. Do you have any recommendations?
Are you joking? There are so many video games. I feel like I'm drowning in them.
It's
I feel
ludicrous.
like, you know, what's that bit in Toy Story where the guy throws Woody away because he's got his new toys? I feel like I'm doing that.
I'm done playing
every
with you
single
now.
day. I'm done playing with you. I don't want to play with you anymore. I've had to do that to GTA 5. Can you believe it? Anyway, the point is, Scott.
2023.
There are so many good games coming out, like this week alone. But one I don't want people to forget about is this little guy, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It came out last week. It's on Game Pass. I'm really surprised by it. Genuinely shocked by how much I'm enjoying this game because if you don't know, it is an asymmetrical multiplayer title, kind of in the vein of Friday the 13th, the game. It's by the same publisher, or something like Dead by Daylight, where you have two teams. One is made up of killers, including old Leatherface. You have 3 killers against 4 survivors, and survivors kind of have to like sneak around. They can stun the killers, but they can't like take them out completely. They have to escape. The killers have to do what they do best and kill. And this normally isn't necessarily my genre because, as you may know, I don't like, you know, talking to strangers. So I don't like teamwork.
It's not 2006 Xbox Live anymore.
It's not.
No.
I was scared back then and I'm scared now. So I was quite hesitant to get this, but my girlfriend the other night was like, look, it's on Game Pass. You buy it, we'll play it, we'll have a good time. And since then, I've not been able to stop playing it. I'm having such fun in this game, Scott.
Also, it's worth just saying that we're not sponsored by this whatsoever, but every now and then a game comes along that you just want to talk about. Maybe you put some time into it or something.
Although I suppose for full disclosure, so maybe take it with a pinch of salt, there is like a degree of separation. Like, I do have a friend who works at Sumo Digital, but it was Sumo Nottingham who works in this game. Right. So like, she didn't work in it, but you know, obviously keep that in mind because I'm going to gush about this a lot, but that is not a factor.
We've got the opinions, we're just shooting from the hip. Shooting from the heart.
I was so surprised by this game, Scott.
I'm still yet to play this game, but the amount that you've messaged me going, I'm still playing it, I'm still loving it, I can't believe how much I'm loving the Texas Chainsaw game. My comparison is the Friday the 13th game.
Absolutely.
Which I really, really loved, and it's very, very similar in terms of the asymmetrical stuff. However, like you said, now it's more of a squad-based thing. I'm doing this because it's like 4-on-4.
Yeah.
Potentially Wolverine snicked.
4 and 3.
4 and 3, okay.
Yeah.
But still, trying to make that work in the Texas Chainsaw mold is what initially threw me off, and didn't like necessarily put me off, but it still kind of made me go, oh, so Leatherface has friends. Leatherface has a family, has a whole team that you're going after. It's not entirely asymmetrical.
This is it. I don't know if this is like a common misconception, but like Leatherface is kind of the only big movie killer, you know, your Michaels, your Jasons, your Freddys, who's like ever worked as part of a gang. You know, everyone else.
This blew my mind when you said this the other day.
Right from the first movie, there's always been the Sawyer family, and that was the thing I was most looking forward to because I like Leatherface, but I like the fact that you could play as the hitchhiker from the first movie, the old man cook from the first movie. So I'm a big fan of this franchise, and I was a big fan of the Evil Dead game that came out last year. Like, to me, that's the bar that these games are now pressed up against because that was such a love letter to the franchise. You know, it took a bunch of elements from across all of those movies. They managed to integrate them into a really compelling gameplay system. I do have some issues with how this does it, but just the core feel of it is really good. You know, that kind of cat and mouse gameplay is incredibly satisfying. I've mostly played as the killers, and I like the fact that with 3, you kind of get to be the killer all the time if you want to. Like, I played almost exclusively as Leatherface last night because you do need a Leatherface to actually start the game. And it's nice to be able to jump in, spend like a 10-minute round hunting these people down and killing them in gory, glory fashion. And it's one of those games that when I was playing last night, you know when you kind of think, okay, I'll play a little bit, then I'll watch a movie. That movie got pushed back to the point where it was 12 o'clock and I was thinking, there's no point even starting the film right now.
What's the thing? Why is this? How is this getting you in a way that the Friday the 13th didn't get you, or Dead by Daylight didn't get you?
I'll tell you why. Because 1, I have actually someone to play it with, but 2, I like the coordination between the killers. Obviously, in Friday the 13th especially, there's one killer and you're kind of trying to hunt everyone down. What I find really fun about this is working with another killer or another 2 killers to kind of set traps and kind of live out like those cinematic moments. I'm sure that even if you're not a huge fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, you'll have seen that iconic scene towards the beginning of the first one where you have a survivor like roaming around the house not knowing what's going on. Leatherface opens the door, bashes them on the head, and then kind of drags them away. I've been replicating that all the way through this game. Like, you start off in the basement. The survivors start off in the basement where it's only them versus Leatherface.
Okay.
They have to get out the basement, get to like the surface, and then find a proper exit. And kind of just setting traps for people as they come up into the house has been so satisfying. Like watching someone walk towards a door and unlock it, and then like springing on them out of nowhere. You're like in charge of those jump scares, and I just find that endlessly just satisfying, especially like I said, with this element of team play that I didn't necessarily get from Friday the 13th, where, you know, I'm coordinating with someone else, they're chasing them, and I'm saying, right, you know, they're a little bit faster than you, but if you take them into these bushes, I'll be able to jump out,
I'll be
hit them on the head, I'll be able to wait, and it's just that kind of interplay between the survivors and between the killers that I've just found really enjoyable, and it's not novel by any means, like we mentioned a bunch of other games there, but this one just has kind of like, one, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I love. Two, there's a level of detail to the recreation that I think is incredible. And I love living in that world. And three, the addition of, like I said, more killers. To me is closer to what I want, because I like playing as the survivors, but I don't necessarily love that element of these games.
That was always the thing playing the Friday the 13th game. Obviously that game came with more like superpowers ostensibly for Jason. You could walk around the map, you could do all these different just ways of replicating the effects from the films where all of a sudden he's in two places at once, or it seems like he is, or whatever. And I really like the idea of ostensibly like reverse horror. Like we did a list on this on the channel the other week on reverse horror video games that let you play as the killers, let you play as someone other than the survivor. And it's just a really cool idea. It kind of reminds me, this is a weird analog, but it reminds me of battle royale games where like you're hiding in a bathtub or a cupboard or around a corner or whatever, and someone who's in exploring that environment has no idea that you're there, and you can get the jump on them. Backing that up with, you know, like a slasher franchise or whatever, it's just a really cool new age multiplayer thing to do. I know it's been around for a few years now, but it's still cool.
The way this game handles stealth I find really interesting, because even on like the recommended brightness levels, the shadows are so dark that the survivors can kind of hide in them, which is really satisfying.
Not
so
on my TV,
you have you'll knock it all the way up. So like that, like I said, that game of cat and mouse where you're kind of tracking someone, because you might get a few hits, they might get away from you. And that kind of the way it replicates that moment in a horror movie where, like you said, the victim is there behind something holding their breath, and then the monster is sort of like, you know, searching. The way it replicates that is really satisfying, because I had an instance last night where I hit someone with the chainsaw to the point where they started like bleeding and they needed to sort that out. But then I was following the blood trail, so I followed it upstairs, and then I thought they went through a gap, so I was telling, you know, my teammates, I was like, right, they've gone through that gap, go around, check them out. And then I noticed I'd been tricked, because I turned around and they were actually hiding behind the door that I came in. Right. And I thought, you cheeky monkey, and I revved the chainsaw and I killed them then. But it was just that satisfying moment of, I've been outsmarted, but then I've managed to get lucky and you're dead. It's just those like little moments. I don't know how it's going to be in like the long term, and I'm going to get into some criticisms in a second, but in the moment, while it might be a little bit janky, those highs kept me playing like so much.
I think it is just interesting touching on this as an overall genre. Like Dead by Daylight seems to be the genre leader. Like the amount of DLC that thing has got, you know, it's pretty endless. It just got Nicolas Cage added to it, but there's like Saw packs for it and various other franchises as well. And then across the last few years, like Ilphonic came out with Friday the 13th. I'm pretty sure they did the Predator game as well, Hunting Ground. And we talked about this a little bit on the What Culture Gaming podcast as well, so please go subscribe to that for podcasts all week long. But still, it feels like one of those genres that's just quite humbly kind of came along. And it's like Dead by Daylight led the charge, and then a couple of other asymmetrical horrors have come along, like you mentioned Evil Dead before, and it's only increasingly becoming more of a thing. Like I feel like the next you know, sort of half a year, couple of years worth of multiplayer genres in terms of new ideas are going to be the extraction shooter and the asymmetrical multiplayer, and what can we do with those frameworks to get, you know, new ideas going, kind of thing.
Definitely, man. And I think if you're a horror fan, like I am, obviously a huge horror fan.
You never mentioned this.
I've never mentioned that. It's funny, that, isn't it? No. Never did anything on the What Culture Horror channel.
What's that?
Should check it out.
Go
anyway.
subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've been eating so well over the past year. Like, just the way that these movies and these franchises have been recreated in video game form. As long as you're a fan of multiplayer titles, like, there's so much love and care poured into these games. However, that does get me onto my biggest criticism of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game.
I was going to say the reviews are a bit...
They're a bit mixed. Mostly server issues, I think I've seen a lot of people complain about. I've been quite fortunate that I haven't had any of those, at least right now. You know, I haven't had to wait long for matches, and I've only been kicked out of a match once, which was really annoying, but it's been relatively stable for me so far. Obviously not to discount anyone else's experiences, you know, I might have just gotten very lucky, like I did with Star Wars Jedi Survivor back in the day. But my main kind of gripe, and there are a few, is that it's only based on the first Texas Chainsaw movie.
Yes.
Compared to The Evil Dead, which was this love letter of the entire franchise and eventually got DLC for the Evil Dead remake as well, I was a little bit disappointed because while everyone loves the original movie, and that's kind of like the only great movie in the entire franchise.
I didn't know there was any sequels,
You didn't know there was any sequels. There's like 8 or 9. You know, there's so many. And within those sequels, there are a lot of characters that I would have liked to have seen. There are a lot of versions of Leatherface that I would have liked to have seen. There are certainly levels and maps that I would have liked to have seen brought over, and it means that we get this kind of like strange game where, you know, it's technically a prequel to the first movie, but it means that you get 3 main killers that are in that first film, but then you get 2 original creations, and all of the survivors are original creations as well. And again, you know, it's I just find that a little bit of a shame, and I worry about its longevity because I think if you can't use stuff from the sequels, it means you're probably going to have to come up with original creations. And for me, like the originals in here aren't as compelling as the kind of people you know, and it's also already hampered kind of customization. Like you get 2 extra skins for Leatherface, but the other killers don't have any extra ones, at least the ones from the movies.
Right.
And the other customization elements for the survivors aren't that kind of appealing either. It's like slightly different versions of the outfits that they already wear. So I wonder about like the longevity in that regard.
Yeah, because I'm not necessarily a Texas Chainsaw fan. Obviously, aware of the franchise, or the movie. I've seen the original one, but it's kind of one of those things where what does the Texas Chainsaw Massif actually want from this going forward?
Yeah.
Like, is it just Leatherface skins, like literally different face masks? Can you wear the face masks to the people you've killed?
That would be cool if you
That'd be
could.
cool to put in there.
Can't do that right
Pick
now.
it up Mortal Kombat style.
That's what you should do. That's
want
what he
that.
does in some of the movies.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm also wondering this as well because I don't know if it's diehard Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans who are playing this or people who are kind of just jumping in because this asymmetrical style of multiplayer is possible. Like being a get freak in someone who even likes the Matthew McConaughey Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Is that a thing?
It's a thing. Renee Zellweger's in there as well. Scott Tilford. I wanted to see like those characters in here, and it's a shame that it isn't because, you know, with only 3 maps at launch, I kind of worry where it's going to go going forward. Unlike, you know, Friday the 13th had a lot of rights issues, of course it did, but that incorporated a lot of elements from the sequels, of course, as did Evil Dead, like I mentioned. So right now I'm having a lot of fun with it, but going forward, will it have those kind of like legs? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, this still seems like it's been better received, at least in regards to the performance side of it. It plays a lot better than the original versions of Friday the 13th did. Like that game, and like I said, I'm a huge fan of that thing, but in terms of the mechanics and what you were doing in there, it was always up against the server sync, the bugs and glitches, the general sort of way the character models would move around the world. It did take quite a while for them to patch that thing up to the point that it was genuinely recommendable. And even now, it's not the most polished experience, but at least you'll definitely have fun with it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that this thing seems to be launching in a better state overall. I know it's not the same dev, but like the same general idea.
Here's the thing, like in my experience it has, but like I said, like you look
perfect.
online and a lot of reviews are pointing out like similar issues, so hopefully those get ironed out. I think you know, it's definitely a budget title. It looks good, but there is that kind of like level of jank to some of the animations. You will see the same animations over and over again, and I worry about that repetition in the long run. I'm already a little bit sick of some of the executions you do on some of the survivors. I'm already a little bit too familiar with the maps, so
Okay.
I don't want that kind of sense of familiarity to set in too soon. I want to find people who are playing like a little bit different, you know, making different builds with the characters because there are extensive skill trees and stuff. So, yeah, it's like a very optimistic early launch. I just hope it gets the support that it needs kind of going forward.
It's just in a field of spotlights. We just want to shine a little torch on this as well, because there's so much right now, and this week and next week especially, there's so many things about to drop: Sea of Stars, Armored Core, whatever. So it's gonna be very, very easy to miss this thing, and it is on Game Pass, so you kind of want to give it a shot while you can.
It was easy for me to miss it. I almost didn't play it, like I said, because I didn't really want to jump in on my own, and I do worry about how much mileage you'll get if you don't want to talk to people or communicate. Like, it probably will be quite a punishing solo experience, but it was one that I kind of just just took a chance on, and I wasn't sure if I was going to, and then ended up having a really good time, and I like shouting out those kind of success stories almost, especially because, like you said, all of these games are going to get devoured in a few days anyway by Armored Core and then going into Starfield, so I'll probably end up putting this down.
It doesn't stand a chance.
I just hope I pick it back up.
Yes, it's chances
thing.
right now. Yeah. Also, we shout out loads of the best, like 6 and 7 out of 10 games. Sometimes they stick with you more than the hyper-polished stuff in terms of games that you can make more memories with. So it is worth shouting out little gems like this every now and then. Go check it out on Game Pass.
That's it.
Why not?
I was going to say, especially if it's on Game Pass, like it's £35 on the PlayStation Store, which is what I paid. So, you know, maybe check some of the reviews, check some gameplay out to see if it's your thing. But if you have Game Pass especially, I think you've kind of got nothing to lose, at least to try it out.
No, plus there's nothing on Xbox until Starfield comes out anyway. Sea of Stars, I lie.
You lie.
Is out soon, but let us know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe you've played Texas Chainsaw by now. I'll put a little video here that celebrates horror stuff in gaming as well. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
.com.